Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, and we are doing episode 2 of our Fireside Chat series, where my executive assistant, Svetlana Lane, is here with us to kind of ask me some questions and just have a chat about what it means to build a business, what it means to be an entrepreneur, and how we do that without burning ourselves out being a small business owner. So Svetlana, thank you so much for spending this time with me. First, how are you doing today? How's it going?
Pretty good. Mondays are always, I try to make Mondays a little bit more restful just because I do work on Saturdays, so I'm having a nice slow morning and I'm happy to be here.
Hey, I love that. And that kicks us right off into like, how do we find balance, right? So, because
Right.
you've got a couple of different businesses similar to me, right? And one of those is
Hmm.
the music studio where people have time to take lessons on Saturdays, right? So you have that
Hmm.
open. I love
Exactly.
that. Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
So I wanted this fireside chat to be about addressing the corporate mentality that we oftentimes can be sucked into as business owners. And that's something I have personal experience with. So basically, a lot of business owners will start their businesses because they don't want to be sucked into that corporate mindset mentality, right? A lot of people quit their corporate jobs
Mhm.
and to in order to find something that's more fulfilling. But then what I have found in my personal entrepreneurial journey and what I keep on running into is this idea that your business needs to grow hard and grow fast. And
Yep.
you need to have 3 year projections and you there's a right and a wrong. It's just like this really strong pull back to that world. And so I wanted to start our conversation kind of, or have this conversation today about, you know, running into that, especially because you're a human design, you have this human design perspective on things and like being true to yourself in your work and
Hmm.
even the gene keys. You talk about the gene keys and how they almost show you how you are almost wired to be prosperous in this world. So from
Right.
that lens, I wanted to address this corporate lifestyle that some of us can get kind of pushed into.
Yes. And the other aspect of that, um, that we're talking about, right, to just put this like fully into the conversation as well, is this really masculine way of doing business that
Mm-hmm.
really focuses on competition, focuses on,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, growing, excuse me, growing fast, growing hard, being extremely externally focused on results, right? What are the tangible results that you see? And I want to be super clear that there are there are healthy masculine traits that we need in business, right? Like that's part of that is the doing. Like what are you actually doing in your business, right? That and doing that in a healthy way is really, really important. But what we miss a lot of and what isn't talked about and emphasized kind of in the overall culture and especially in the American corporate culture is the
Mm-hmm.
feminine side of business, right? The connection, the collaboration, the nurturing relationships, the being able to create a flow for your life that actually feels good so that you can keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the other part of this. And I love that we're having this conversation because you're right. I talk about this in a number of ways. One being human design and Gene Keys and how are each one of us really um coded to be um who we are, what's our specific alignment. I am different from you, right? We have different designs. And so we're designed to work differently. But I also, talk about this in X squared, right? Like where we're talking about literally your financial, we do financial projections. We look at profit and loss statements. We look at where are you in relation to the goals that you want to create, right? And so I see that piece as kind of the healthy masculine side, right? What are your dreams? What are your goals? What are your desires? How do we put a roadmap in place and allow you to take those right aligned actions, the ones that feel really good? That's healthy. That's super healthy. But then the flow side, the feminine side is, all about how are you feeling while you're doing? How are you feeling while you're taking these actions? And how do we get that to be even more in line? And then the last way that I talk about this is pretty specifically like talking through this type of work in Expansive Visionaries Collective as well. And
Mm,
that's where we have a whole group of women who are wanting this balance, wanting to really create a business that lets them express all of who they are,
mm,
creates, prosperous income for themselves, for their families, for their employees, allows them to, live the life that they want to live, and does good work for the people that they're helping, right? They want to help and uplift their clients, but they want to do it in a way that's not at the expense of their mental, physical, spiritual well-being anymore. Because like you
mhm.
mentioned at the top, like it's most of us, not all, there are some people who have only ever been entrepreneurs. I have friends that way as well. They're
Yeah,
like, I
sure.
actually never worked in corporate, which is amazing. But for most entrepreneurs, we started
Mm,
somewhere else. We have some sort of kind of professional trauma in our background, that that caused us, right? That was like a catalyst to leave and do it a better way. Whatever it is that we're skilled at, right? It's like I can
mhm.
do this in a different way. And I want to, be my own boss. I want to be in charge of how I structure my day, in charge of how I allow or don't allow um, different clients into my world, right? Being able to work with the people that we actually want to work with. And again, do it in a way that actually feels good to us. Um, so yes, this is a huge topic. And where do you want to start from, like which angle?
Right. It sounds what you're saying is the business should also serve you. It's a multi, if it's serving you, then you have the capacity to really engage in the business, re-engage in the business and serve others. And I love that kind of full circle that you've described. My personal experience has been kind of interesting with opening this brick and mortar location to offer music classes and lessons this year. I just opened in March, actually, but prior to that, I was getting ready. And so I've been getting counseling from a local small business development person. Honestly, I was just sent to him because I was hoping to apply for a local grant to help me do some renovations. And they said, you got to go through him. And one of the things that he had me do was create 3-year projections. He in those projections, he included so many things that I didn't even need. He projected a front desk person to like answer phone calls and greet people at the door. Well, my type of business is not even really that. I don't have a lot of just people walking in, checking out my place. It's more appointment setting, it's most people register online and then they show up. Or they'll email me. There's not a lot of phone calls happening anyway. But I just thought it was interesting how he just assumed that's what I needed. He made all these assumptions about my business, and then he projected my 3-year. He calculated my 3-year, numbers, and he went on to be. He had this really sad Zoom call with me, and he's like, "I just don't know how you're going to pay yourself more than $20,000 this year," and that actually really broke my heart, and I
Mm.
thought, well, maybe I should go back to teaching in the schools then, because then I'll get, yeah, it's, the hours are set, your clients are set, you can't pick who you work with, but I get health insurance, I'll get a steady income. He really had me questioning the whole thing to a point where I wrote an email to my landlord and I never sent it. I waited a day and went to sleep on it, but I wrote an email to my landlord backing out of the lease,
Mm.
just because he broke me that much with these projections. And of course, I also really took his opinion to heart, thinking he's the local small business, you know, guru here. He works with all the small businesses in town. He knows them all. So of course, like, I'm taking everything he's saying by heart. But he is a rich white man who, owned an IT business or whatever, and did things in that corporate sense. So what do you feel about that story? And like, what would you, looking back, like reflecting on that? Um, Actually, just to add to that, I had a student that came in the following day who owns a local soap business here in another town close by, and she was like, "No, don't listen to that man." She has a very profitable soap business. It's a brick and mortar as well, and she set me straight. And thank God for her.
Mm.
Like, the universe sent her in that next morning after writing that email, and she was like, "This is what you're gonna do. You don't need to renovate. You don't need anything. Just clean it up, just show up, do everything you're doing right here in your living room, and just move it over there." And she gave me so much wisdom that this
Mm.
man would have never, ever, ever given me. And looking back now, she was more of a source of truth, because she actually started a business from scratch, making her soap, right? And then eventually moved into a brick and mortar, sort of like I did. Yeah, so just reflecting on that, and I wanted to kind of hear your feedback.
Oh, yeah, that's such a good example, right? Because even to the point where, when you were applying for a grant, it's the same if you're applying for a loan from like the Small
Yes.
Business Administration, or from a bank. They want to see projections. They want to have like a full business plan in place and like all of that, right? So it's like, okay, I get that this is a thing. If you want to get funding somehow for your business, people want some sort of proof of concept, right? But when someone has no idea really truly how to build your business, right? So a music studio, yeah, making all those other assumptions it's from my perspective, so like from the financial planning side, right? It's very similar. If I have garbage assumptions, if my assumptions are bad, then the output is going to be wrong. It's
Mm,
going to be bad data out. If I don't have any clue as to how you actually make money in your business, and then I just make it up, then yeah, I can say whatever I want on the other side.
mhm,
It's not going to be helpful. And so what your story was reminding me of another one, and it flew out of my mind, and we'll see if it brings its way back in because it was like so similar. Um, but the sense of I have to build it the way, someone else has built it. And if I'm
mhm,
not doing it your way, I'm doing it wrong.
mhm.
right, that piece, that sense of disappointment, like, from the beginning, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
taking your fire and just, like, pouring water on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it out, like, "Nope." And then we have to, thankfully, the woman that you spoke to came in and helped you, like, relight, like, "No, no, no, no," right? Like, "Get out of
Mm-hmm.
that, let's relight your fire," right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's let this burn the way that it's supposed to. I see that as when I am working with someone, it's about that's okay, there's the example, it's coming back to me now. So I have one of my really close friends, his younger sister, um, was in a very tough situation for several years. She's an esthetician, does amazing work, right? So doing all kinds of, beauty treatments and whatnot, but like really she has crazy stories. She's hilarious. But she was working for a woman. She had her own client base. She worked with lots of people. People came only to her if they wanted, if she didn't have an opening in her schedule, her clients would not see any of the other estheticians on staff. They only wanted her. And so she had this beautiful, clientele. And the woman that she worked for was really abusive. The woman that owned the
Mm-hmm.
salon was I mean, in every sense of the word, a toxic boss.
Mm-hmm.
And she was she was ready to quit and just leave and just like, "I don't know what to do, but I cannot be here anymore. This situation is mentally, emotionally, physically, like, burnout to the point of
Mm-hmm.
breakdown."
Mm-hmm.
And so she decided that she was going to open her own. She was going to leave, open her own esthetician studio. And when she was really nervous about it because 'cause she'd never done that before, and so, of course, my dear friend was like, "Hey, you should talk to Hannah. Just talk to her." She's fr and telling me, like, "Can you talk to my sister? She's freaking out a little bit, and I feel like you're, like, the right person to talk her through some of these questions." And she had a very, very similar experience, to you, where first she had talked to her mother's financial advisor,
Mm-hmm.
and she told her that you're like, "Just plan to not make any money the first 3 years. Just plan that you're not gonna make anything at all, just 0, and that's how it's gonna be, and you're gonna have to, really fight for it." And when she came to talk to me, this it was so identical. It was like 2 days later, and she was telling me her story, telling me about her clients and how much they love her, and I was like, "What do you mean? Why? Why would someone ever tell you that you're just not gonna make like, you're just not gonna make any money at all?" When she hadn't even, like, taken in really what was being said, the other advisor. Um, like, "Okay, if you here are your expenses," and there for her at the time, like, the beginning, her lease was gonna be super cheap. She had all the equipment that she needed. Really, like, what do you have to overcome? What are the expenses that you have to overcome in order to be able to pay yourself? It was like $500 a month, and she had literally a list of clients that would be book her out for the rest of the year, and I said, "There's no way that you won't make money in this endeavor if you put yourself out there and you let your clients know where you're going. If they won't go see anyone else, they will come to you." It might be a little bit slow at the beginning. You might have to, take a little bit of time ramping up, but this is this is a fabulous idea, right? That's like she had everything lined up so well. She had such a good foundation like laid, and then to have someone else again, kind of like you're saying, a woman that her mom has worked with for years and years, tell her like, "No, you're just not going to make money in the first 3 years. It was devastating to her. And she almost was like, okay, I guess I can't do this then. Fast forward about 2.5 years later, she is killing it. She's doing amazing. She's making more money than she ever made at the other place. She loves her clients. Her clients love her. And it's working. It's working because she had a good plan. She just needed that support, right? That wind under her wings for me to say, "Hey, yeah, you're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the right
Mm-hmm.
things." Um,
It's
and
kind of like
so
confirmation bias almost. Like you, if you believe in a sense, and it's not, I'm
yeah,
not like, but if you really focus on that belief, then you will prove yourself. Your mind will start proving that for you in a sense, as well. Yeah, but
yeah,
if somebody, that's what happened to me. I believed this guy, and my mind was starting to prove, to me that, yeah, perhaps he is right. You know,
hmm.
I'm sure that, of course, that's just a part of it, but but it's
Well,
interesting. Just her idea shifted just from talking to you and from another professional, who had something else to say, which is really cool.
right. And in your case with the woman who owned soap business, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's she could see it because she did something similar,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was the
Mm-hmm.
I could see from the other advisor's perspective, there are times that for financial advisors, yeah, it can be really hard to get started, but you have to build a client base from scratch. If that's what you're doing as a financial advisor, starting from zero, yeah, it's hard. I tried that in 2007. It was very hard. When I launched in 2021, I had clients who would not work with anyone else. And when they heard that I left, they found me, right? They sought me out and said, "How can I keep working with you because you are who I want?" And for my friend's sister, it was the same. She wasn't starting from scratch. She was starting from having a reputation of being good at what she did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that's for you the same exact same, right? You're not starting from scratch. You have a full freaking studio of of music
Yeah.
students. And
Yeah.
so it's a
We're just adding to
very
that.
just adding to that. Yeah, adding more offerings, adding more configurations of how you can teach people. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very easy for someone, even in a space where, maybe they're a business mentor, but if they have like this is what I see a lot. If they have a fixed idea of what the right way to build a
Mm-hmm.
business is, or that their way, the way that they did it is somehow the best way, or even if they've read or listened to lots of books, or like, well, this is what this person
Mm-hmm.
says, so that's how I do it. If they have a very fixed way of building a business, anything else will be ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, well, you don't really fit into this mold, and so how I'm going to have to do some mental gymnastics to fit you into my mold, and then see if you're going to be successful in my mold.
Yeah, that's right. That's really good. And that kind of goes back to the whole right and wrong, black and white, mentality. Like, and I really suffer a lot from people pleasing, and so for me, I really want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. Um, but at the same time, I need to create more space for myself to almost see it as a journey, see it as, let's see what happens, and be curious more. And I know you talk about the curiosity in some of your work, but how else would you say we can start addressing this right and wrong, black and white, as business owners, and just embracing more of our personal, like, this is supposed to be this way, instead of I failed, it's failing or it's not good enough yet. It's never going to be it because you're just going to keep looping that it's never going to be good enough. If
Mm-hmm.
you're in that right black and white, it's never going to be white. You're you know. So what advice would you give to someone who struggles with that like me?
Yeah. So the black and white thinking, the right and
Hmm.
wrong, black and white, wrong way, right way, success or failure, right?
Hmm.
That mindset is again, it's the unhealthy masculine expression of that. It's like there is only one way to do this. Or there's only one best way. And if you do it a different way, like I guess, but you're like, it's probably going to suck, right? Um, there's no room for nuance. There's no room for innovation there either.
Mm, right,
Is
right.
what's really interesting, and so we can get sucked into that because the binary of it feels easier, and it almost feels like this isn't
That makes
true,
sense.
but it's like it almost feels safer,
Yes,
right?
I
Like
can
it's
see what you
either
mean. Yeah.
or,
Hmm.
right? If I'm doing it right, then I don't have to worry about anything else.
Right.
And so what it does when we have that really black and white binary thinking is it doesn't allow for, again, it doesn't allow us to see the path that, goes, oh, this path actually goes like around the corner, right? Or
Hmm.
it maybe doesn't see, if we use a mountain metaphor, like, oh, the peak is right there. I see it. I'm
Hmm.
going up to the peak and it's not very far. It's just right there. And
Hmm.
as you're going, oh, actually there's like 10 switchbacks on your way,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be like too steep to go up to the top. If you go just a straight shot, you can't,
Hmm.
walk straight up. You have to do the switchbacks to go back and forth. And
Hmm.
so but we can't necessarily see that easily, right? The path isn't
Hmm.
super clear when it's like the switchback goes here and through some trees, and then the switchback comes back,
Hmm.
and then there's like this boulder outcropping that you have to go through. But we
Hmm.
see, I know, I just see the peak. I just want to be there. I just want to like,
Right.
that's the
Yeah,
$10,000 a month, or, $100,000 a month, wherever you're at in your business. Like,
exactly.
just get there, just be there now.
Yeah.
Um,
Would you
and
also say, sorry,
oh no, go
did you
ahead.
want to finish? I was going to say also, this idea came to me, something that I have worked a lot in just my personal life, but celebrating how far I've come, just looking
Hmm.
back, and even I know you've talked about before when we've chatted about a book that you read about that, I think, where you look back and you want to measure that growth, and remind yourself of how far you actually have come. And if I remind myself of where I started just 3 years ago at literally nothing, it's pretty amazing. I'm kind of in awe of how much I was able to do. Um, but I think that also has helped me a little bit of, with challenging my mind with the black and white. Everything's good or everything's bad, you know.
Hmm.
And oftentimes with my trauma that I have worked and still working healing, my brain will want to do the flight thing, well,
Hmm.
it's all bad, so I'm cutting out, and I'm not, instead of saying that, well, this is just a normal part of the journey, like it's the hero's journey, it's normal ebb and
Yeah.
flow, so I just try to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
add that.
so that book that you're talking about is The Gap and the Gain,
Mm,
by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And Dan Sullivan is the founder of Strategic Coach, which is one of the biggest entrepreneurial coaching
mm,
companies that exists. They've been around since the 70s. And that type of thinking, the gap and the gain, The gap sees how far you are from the peak. I'm here, the peak is up there. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. The gain says, dude, you have hiked like 3,000 feet from the
Right.
bottom, right? Like,
Look how
look how
strong
far,
you are.
yes,
Yeah.
look how far you've come. Look how strong you are. Look how much you've learned um getting here. And even to the point, like even further back from that, like you
Mhm.
learned how to hike. You figured out what equipment
Mm.
you needed. You planned your route. You got here today, right? Like looking, the
Mhm.
gain sees everything that you've done to get to where you are. The gap
Mhm.
sees all is always just looking at where you're not yet.
Mhm.
And so you can literally always be in the gap because even, oh, so let's say you get to that $10,000 a month figure. Once you get there, you'll be like, well, but I'm not paying myself $10,000 a month. My business is making 10,000 a month, so it's still not good enough. Right? So now I got to make 30, so now I got to make 50, so now I got to make $60,000 a month, right? So you can literally always be in the gap
Mhm.
versus looking back and saying exactly what you said, like, oh my gosh, like if I look at the last 3 years, look at all the things that I have done, look at all the things that I've
Mhm.
learned, and
Mhm.
I am, right? So for in your instance, you are paying all of your bills all by yourself.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
opened a freaking brick and mortar location for your business, right?
Mhm.
That's humongous. You're creating
Mhm.
something in your community that doesn't exist yet.
Mhm.
People are signing up. People
Mhm.
are coming along with you. You're putting the journey, you're
Mhm.
putting this beautiful energy out into the world, and people are like, "Oh yeah, yes, I want that.
Mhm.
I want to be a part of that." And so, and they're paying you for it, right? They're giving,
Mhm.
take my money.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
that gain is really important to continue to remind yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always between those places, the gap and the game, the gap and the game.
Hmm.
And I think it's because uh, I I that that pressure, I feel like there's pressure in society that you've got to hit these numbers. I've supported EOS companies
Hmm.
in the past, and I've sat in leadership meetings for years, weekly or sometimes twice a week, taking notes. I was like the EOS support person, and I'd walk them through that whole 90 meeting process. And they look at their numbers and they track their numbers and how much, each aspect of their business is gaining and what do we need to do and we need to create an issue and maybe it's just because I've been around that so much. I'm sorry, my phone's on do not disturb, but it keeps on going off.
Oh,
um
okay.
but yeah, so I've been around that so much that it feels like, oh, this is the only way to do it. I've even had another amazing client. He was a CEO of a big two companies actually. They split off and he was running them both. And he told me one time, Svetlana, you are like the sunshine glowing on all the things, but you need to be like a laser focused on
Mm.
one thing. And yeah, and so I take these people that I really admire and I think they're great people, and I oftentimes, you know, I see they succeeded, so how can they be wrong? And I start questioning that about myself. Well, maybe I need to be more like a laser. I need to pick one thing and just really drive it home, and um, that is something that I definitely think about often.
Yeah. Yeah, that so again, this there's a balance. There's a balance there. And I know lots of people. So I would consider myself a visionary, not an integrator in in the
Hmm.
EOS system, right? Like that's
Yeah.
definitely me. And at the same time, right? Like so you're like my integrator here.
Hmm.
Um, and I need that. I need that kind of support. But it depends on how you are utilizing that structure. Again, if you're utilizing, this, if you have a focus on um, meeting certain sales targets, or cutting costs in a certain way, or getting your budget right sized,
Hmm.
these are healthy things to do for business.
Hmm.
Again, this the healthy expression of that, like accountability, is beautiful. Having a direction that, like, especially if you have a good sized team,
Hmm.
or if
Yeah.
you have employees, right? Letting them know the direction of the company is kind, right? Like, this is where we're
Yeah.
at, this is where we're going, right? So having those measures in place, having those
Hmm.
meetings that help people be, everyone know where you're at, like, we're all on the same page here. That's healthy. It's when we pull it back into, this is the only way to do it,
Hmm.
or, this is, we're not meeting targets, and so we're going to slash something else, right? Like, that's where, okay, we need to be able to have some creative problem solving in place. That's
Yeah.
where the feminine comes in. That's where the creativity, the innovation, that's that's how we marry those in a bigger
Hmm.
business. When we look at it from a smaller business, so like a solopreneur, or someone who has, just a few team members, like a very small business, it's not it's not going to feel exactly the same, right? And so I think that's what we're talking about. Like, okay, you don't have to take this corporate structure and like try to like fit it on top of your,
Implement it.
right,
Yeah.
your very small business. It's going to be different. One of the things that's especially different is that with very small businesses, 1 to, even 10 to 20 employees. I mean, that's still a small business.
Hmm.
In that case, the owner, the CEO, the head entrepreneur, right, or partners, the business is still there and to support their families as well, right? And so
Hmm.
it's not what do I want to say? It's not like a machine that's just running itself, usually, at that point. Usually it's still like the owners are still heavily involved. That's where how they are paying for their lifestyle as well, how they're paying for food, how they're paying their mortgage, all of that. And like, there's a balance, I guess. That's really, really what I want to stress. There's a balance between, here's what the company is doing, and here's what I'm paying myself. Here's what I'm able to actually, take out of the business safely. And not everyone, even business mentors, quote unquote mentors, who have done it a different way, can can give that kind of advice of like, how do I support my lifestyle? How do I support, my mortgage, my family, give them stability, have this sense of safety and stability amongst, entrepreneurship, which can be a roller coaster, and grow my business at the same time. And so that's, again, the creativity, the openness to new ideas is really, really important. Um, there was something else there though that I wanted to say, and I lost
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts go through while you were talking. One is just like learning your pace, knowing your pace. And for me, I had to kind of accept that, look, I'm a single mother. I have my daughter full time, full custody. I've got, house work, chores, food, you know, I've got other stuff on my plate. I barely have a social life, and that's okay. I'm just in survival mode. And and so saying, look, I have to sometimes coach myself and be like, well, I showed up today. I showed up, and I'm going to celebrate that. I opened the doors, and it's not that my business like is super struggling either. It's not like that, but it's a way for me to combat some of that pressure that I feel like I need to have more, 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 more. I showed up, and this is how slow it's supposed to grow. And somebody, another business owner, again, a woman, all these amazing women, you know, coming together, encouraging each other. It's amazing. It's so sweet. Like EBC, I think,
Mm-hmm.
for you. But two doors down, there's a catering business, and I also teach her, the wife of the business and owners. She said to me, "You don't want to grow fast because if you grow fast, imagine will you actually be able to handle all that growth so suddenly? Your quality might go down." Um, and she was, I think she's completely right. I'm already pretty much a full plate, carrying a full plate all the time. And so um, I think those thoughts are important to have too in these conversations. Like, is it really the right thing? Or like, is it really right thing for me? Yeah, maybe if there was a team, three of us bought into this business, and okay, so we can delegate the marketing or social media or the ads, or we can delegate. But for someone who's doing everything herself, plus, I have to learn to give myself grace and just radically love where I am right now. Um, yeah, just throwing that out there for anybody who needed to hear that, honestly.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you are where you need to be. And I'm seeing, and every day I see confirmation of that. The universe is confirming you're just fine where you are. You're doing amazing right where you are. You get to define what amazing looks like for you in a sense too.
Yes. That's actually exactly where I was trying to go. So thank you.
Oh, cool.
That sense of bringing the human design piece in, right?
Hmm.
That's where we can actually see more of like, how are you wired to function? Right? Are you
Hmm.
someone who's like, so for me, I need a lot of projects on my plate. That's what makes me
Hmm.
feel like alive. I've got a lot of energy for that. Like that, the excitement, the novelty is
Hmm.
important to me. Where
Hmm.
you're a projector, and that aura needs more downtime. Like you
Hmm.
literally need more rest. You're a different type of person. And yeah, growing at light speed, it it's hard on your nervous system. I had a client, or have clients, that were growing a business, and we're on track for about $400,000 in revenue in the first 18 months.
Wow.
And the wife was like, she felt like she was on the nose of a rocket ship because she was,
Mm.
right? She's like, this, it's so much. I need help. I need help. I need help. I need, like, that was just her mantra every month. I need more help. I need more help. I need more help. And that's not healthy either. And
Hmm.
so if you're growing so fast that you're blowing out your nervous system, basically,
Yeah.
mm,
How is
that's
that
not
serving
sustainable.
you? Yeah.
Right. It's not sustainable. And so to grow at a pace where it's like you get to find that happy medium that
Hmm.
it does exist. You can, there are some times where it'll be busier. You'll be in a busier season of life, right?
Hmm.
But I think you make a really, really important footnote, right? Like this point of when you're a mom, especially if you're a single mom and you're the one caring for your child and growing a business, there are a lot of women out there who are doing the same.
Hmm.
And finding those ways, right? Finding the tribe, finding the people that can help you, um, is really, really important, but it's gonna look different to either a young single man or even a young
Yeah.
single woman with no kids, right? It's going to look different, but especially
Mhm.
for a young single man or a married man with a wife who takes care of their kids, right? That's
Mhm.
that
Mhm. Yeah.
it is not the same. It is not the same to grow a business when you are
Mhm.
carrying the caretaker load as well.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
finding that balance is super important. And like you said, knowing that, hey, this is where I'm at in life right now. I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to be gentle with myself. I'm going to look at the gain, look at where I've come, how far I've come rather, and
Mhm.
just like continuously give yourself, be your biggest hype
Mhm.
woman, to know that
Mhm.
you're doing a lot and you're doing a great job.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so, I I know it's probably going to be time to wrap up, but just one last thought too. I looking into my human design through working with you, and you had mentioned that I'm also a splenic projector, and when I did a little research on that, I found out that splenic projectors tend to be very much in survival mode in general,
Mm,
and so I have to remind myself of that. Like, oh, there's my brain, like thinking I need to run and survive. It's never enough, you know. So even just reminding myself, I sort of have that wiring,
mm,
you know, already, and I can hold space for that, you know, while growing this business. And it's kind of a nice thing to remember, you know, about my makeup in the sense too, like there it is, kind of surfacing again. It's okay to do things differently. It's okay. You
mhm.
do have enough. Like, where's the proof that you don't have enough? You know, and just trying challenging some of that as well. But to those splenic people out there, just want to say that.
Oh, it's
You
so
know,
yeah, that's so good. We could talk
yeah.
another half hour about that for sure. But
Mhm.
yeah, understanding and then understanding the gifts of that. So maybe we'll talk about that another time. What
That's
are the
good.
gifts? Because being a splenic projector is, um, there are absolutely intuitive gifts that are associated with that as
Cool.
well,
We need to
right?
do like a coaching podcast. You should coach me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. I love that.
Honestly, you should coach some business owners. That would be, I love coaching calls.
Oh, that would be
Like
really
listening to
fun.
good, yeah, just throwing it
Yeah.
out there.
All right. Well, we
But
will explore that as well.
yeah.
And as always, for everyone listening, if this resonated for you, if there was anything in here that you were like, oh my gosh, this is, I want to hear more about this, or sparked any questions, I love questions. You can send those to me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com. And we'll talk about it either in a fireside chat or in some other format. I would love to hear from you. So, Svetlana, thank you again for this
Of course.
opportunity to
And
talk,
thank you.
and we will see you again soon.
And I take care.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.